Something is going on. Some of us can see it, some of us can feel it. It's time to expand your thinking. You need to reset everything you thought you knew about the world, about the people you trust, about history, about yourself. Let me tell you a story. For a long time, our world has been under the growing influence of a vast transgenerational criminal mafia that was able to rise up to the highest levels of power. We didn't know because they talked and acted just like you and me.
Just 2 hours ago,
we thought we could recognize true criminals by their words and actions, but we were deceived by their sophisticated speech, wealth, education, beauty, and power. Through a system of blackmail and threats and bribery, they would come to occupy the highest levels of government, corporations, and education. We know them as the deep state or cabal. Most dangerously of all, they achieved almost total influence over the media, the primary means of controlling the good people of the world who were just trying to get on with living. They used their power to slowly convince us that we were the problem, that we were a threat to each other. They used race, gender, and religion to set us apart, and rewrote history to validate these false claims. They funded both sides of the war to crush our potential to prosper and succeed as a peace-loving and creative force of good for the world. Now, with a firm grasp on the media, we drink in their entertainment and lies as they begin their final phase, the total takedown of America. We were the brightest remaining beacon of freedom and humanity's last hope. They knew that if they could take down America, the rest of the world would follow. They cut deals that led us to hand over control of the money system to a private central bank known as a Federal Reserve. This made it possible to influence Washington, D.C., and most of our presidents since then were beholden to the criminals in one way or another. Things took a really bad turn when they concentrated vast power into the hands of the many civilian intelligence agencies throughout the world. They were there to protect us. Instead, these agencies were catastrophically weaponized to boost drug and human trafficking cartels, assassinate political opponents, undermine the military, and change regimes of foreign governments who did not want to adapt to this centralized system of money control. You might think they would choose simply to remain in the shadows, running their criminal activities while we carried on with our lives. But as long as there were freedom for some people to prosper, the cabal was always at risk of being discovered and shut down. There was no way to continue without a plan to eliminate all the threats to their survival, even if it meant imposing a single world government under their jurisdiction, when no national identity, police force, or military could stop them. They called it globalism, exploiting our emotions and our instincts of compassion. They found a way to justify dismantling cultures, borders, national identity under the guise of social justices, creating false narratives of racism, colonism, capitalism to destabilize, ultimately collapse societies so that they were no longer secure enough to reject this dark plan for the world. Where there was no history to distort, they would use wars to force a catastrophic mass migration of people across borders to destabilize and weaken cultural identity. When we didn't accept this, they called us intolerant and shamed us into silence. By 2008, America was in advanced stages of economic decline, with disastrous trade deals leading to widespread loss of jobs and devastating financial crisis. The cabal had now absorbed another extensive criminal empire that was aligned with a twisted and radical form of Islam. Realizing the competition could threaten their goals, they decided to cooperate and agree to mutual terms. Now a hostile foreign enemy was able to insert a subordinate into the U.S. political system. Who would become the president? Saudi Prince Alawid bin Tahali funded Obama's Harvard education and took power by proxy, picking his entire cabinet while buying vast quantities of control in our largest media companies. The Western fraction of the cabal was different. It was another kind of sick altogether. a dark and deeply sinister death cult with a strong reliance on symbolism and numerology, with levels of cruelty unimaginable to all right-thinking people. The reach and scale the secret society would have sent destabilizing shockwaves across the world were it to ever be publicly exposed. They were highly skilled at living just below the surface as they worked their way into the United States presidency. With both fractions of the global mafia now in control, are you ready to hear what they had planned? Make sure you're sitting down for this. They installed rogue government operators in the government. They opened back doors to leak highly classified military intel and top secret special access programs, SAPs. They cut military funding and weakened the command of generals with irrational new rules of engagement. They worked to dismantle NASA and end our supremacy in space. They infiltrated and exposed defense military intelligence programs. They reduced our ability to detect foreign and domestic threats. They used our trusted agencies to target and weaken political opponents. They relaxed our borders and enabled passages of millions of illegals and violent criminal gangs. They moved money to fund global terrorism, resulting in groups like ISIS to capture the vast majorities of territories throughout the world. In 2016, the Cabal Alliance had hoped to retain power. If you are not yet chilled to the bone by the picture that is being formed here about their intentions for us all, let me tell you what was to come next. Through international climate change scams, they would have siphoned trillions of government wealth and eliminated the last good guys in government, and withdraw total funding from our U.S. military, handing over responsibility of our defense to the United Nations. They would revise the Constitution to weaken our ability to fight back, ban the sale of firearms to eliminate our self-defense, insert their people into the Supreme Court, remove the electoral college system to neuter our voting power, and totally eliminate alternative media to shield them from any exposure. They ingested a covert deal to move large quantities of our uranium to captured states in North Korea and in Iran to build up a nuclear arsenal that would threaten the world. For this, they blame Russia, a growing force of opposition to their ambitions of global control. By casting Putin as an enemy and blaming him for this illegal uranium deal, they had planned a devastating nuclear world war between America and Russia that would have exhausted the last two remaining pillars of freedom for the world, accelerating their horrific endgame that had become inevitable. This was their plan. The Cabal miraculously lost power in 2016 when a brave operation took place, led by the U.S. military alliance and their global partners. Were able to return power legitimately over to the light. They had a plan of their very own, one that was many decades in the making. With Donald Trump selected for the role of president, the people of America were slowly awakened to the reality of the world that we live in. So much hidden and lied about in the media channels we had come to trust for all these years with our news and entertainment. This alliance of good set into motion a sophisticated strategy of dismantling the vast network of corruption that had almost completely overcome every level of government, industry, and our legal system. They knew they had to follow the laws of the land as they originally intended. Otherwise, they themselves would be delegitimized. Even though they were just trying to free us from the silent stranglehold of tyranny that we had all come to accept as normal. The panicking deep state used any remaining power they had left to try to save themselves. Each day for 2 years was a careful and meticulously planned balancing act between public perception and the job that needed to be done. Moving too fast would shock and scare a sleeping public, still living in the prison of the mind that was created for them. But after all this, it appears now that not only are we winning, but we have won. The trajectory of this great storm is now radiantly clear. Now we look forward to a new future, thanks to the brave patriots who risked everything to save our world. This time for good. There is not a person alive who has experienced what a world without darkness could be like. A world of free energy that has been kept away from us to force our dependency on their fossil fuel monopolies. Abolishment of income tax that was illegally proposed to pay back interest on loans taken from the cabal banking system. Released cures for most of our deadly diseases. Unleashed space technologies to open frontiers we never dreamed possible. New technologies creating millions of jobs and yielding a global human renaissance to the likes of which we have never seen in the history of the world. Fellow Americans and citizens of the world, now is our turn to shine. Wherever we are, we will become the plan. When we choose to reject what they called globalism, we recognize the words they used to bend us to their will, and we say no more. It's time to turn off the media, follow your instincts, trust yourself, and be the plan. I'm Michael. God bless, Godspeed to each and every one of you worldwide. Where we go one, we go all.